Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are dialing in from. I hope you are safe and well. Welcome to the Social Innovation and Higher Education Landscape in Malaysia, Report Launch and Dialogue. I am Isha Azman from the British Council. We would like to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you. So before we start, I would like to inform you of some housekeeping rules. So please take note that this event is being recorded. We ask that you mute your microphone and turn off your camera for a better digital event experience. So there will be 2 question and answer sessions. First, at the end of the presentation, and second will be during the panel discussion. Please write your questions in the chat box on the right side. For the panel discussion, kindly indicate if your question is directed to a specific panelist or open to any panelists to answer. Now, it is my pleasure to invite Ms. Prabha Sundram, the Head of Education Malaysia at the British Council, to give an opening remark. Over to you, Prabha.
Thanks, Isha. Hi, everyone, and good afternoon to all those who are joining in from Malaysia, and I believe we have some from the UK, so good morning to all of you, and welcome to our webinar, which is to launch the findings of our social innovation in higher education landscape in Malaysia. I think all of you here are quite familiar with the work of the British Council in the area of higher education, in the area of social enterprise, and British Council is known for our work in supporting collaborative partnerships between UK higher education institutions across East Asia and in the country where we are at, and in this case it's Malaysia. We also work very closely with practitioners and stakeholders on the ground, and that's where a lot of you come from. So it's not just about higher education, but it's also about people who are working in the space of social innovation, social enterprise, the ministries, the government, the policymakers. All of these are key stakeholders. Over the past 10 years, our work has been focusing on supporting social innovators and social entrepreneurs across the region, as well as strengthening the enabling environment within which they operate. And in Malaysia, 2 years ago, we published the State of Social Enterprise in Malaysia report. The primary aim of that study was to provide an insight into social enterprise in Malaysia, including providing an estimate of the state and of the scale and scope of the sector. This work is really important because this is a sector that's growing in prominence in Malaysia. We had lots of changes in our federal administration, but the priority in this sector did not diminish in any way at all. And we were really happy to see that it's a vibrant sector which could use support from key stakeholders, policymakers, as well as organizations such as the British Council. So this work builds on past surveys and research, notably the State of Social Enterprise in Malaysia 2014-2015, which was the previous version conducted by the Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Centre, better known as MAGIC. Following on from the published study, we have focused our attention on how we can support at strengthening the social innovation capacity, developing that capacity within specifically the higher education institutions in both East Asia and the UK. So this was a regional initiative, and in Malaysia we are focusing at the in-country initiatives and collaborations that we can bring together for this space. Arguably, social innovation has become more important in this past year, as we all know, as countries around the world continue to grapple with issues that have arisen due to the pandemic. And it's probably forever changed the landscape, and hence this sector is going to become increasingly important and continue to grow. Earlier this year, and this is specifically to do with the connection to higher education, our YB Datuk Sri Nuraini Ahmad, our Minister of Higher Education, did outline 6 strategic focus areas which would be priority areas for the ministry this year for 2021, and this was in her mandate. A key area that was mentioned specifically was strengthening graduates' marketability and also driving community well-being. Now, both these two areas and a lot of the other areas among the six are very interlinked with social innovation and social entrepreneurship. And this cuts across, for higher education, it cuts across teaching and learning, research, knowledge exchange, student outcomes and student development, as well as the role of university in community engagement. In July and August 2019, we commissioned the University of Northampton as the lead UK research team for our social innovation and higher education landscape survey, shortened to the acronym SIHE, SIHE, which involved Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, South Korea, and Vietnam. That project built upon the work that the universities and the British Council had done through another very innovative program known as Building Research Innovation for Community Knowledge and Sustainability, the acronym BRICS, BRICKS. And you can find more information on that through our websites, and Isha will be more than happy to share that information with you if you're interested in the BRICS program. And the BRICS program explored social innovation and social entrepreneurship research and teaching specifically in Hong Kong. And there was a keen interest to see whether this could then be expanded to cover some key markets in the region, because there was a need for this and there was an appetite for this, both from the social entrepreneurship and innovation sector as well as the higher education sector. The project involved University of Northampton leading the overall research, and in country we had specific research partners and local research teams. And we're very pleased that in Malaysia it was Universiti Teknologi Petronas, which was the lead local research partner, and you'll be hearing from the team today. So why are we all here today? Whilst the report has been completed, while we have some key recommendations, we have not yet shared this widely, and we thought that it would be a great opportunity not just to publish the report, but to have a conversation around it, to convene all of you as people who are interested in this space to see how we can take forward some of the recommendations. So we are hoping that today's session we would hear about the key findings and recommendations from the SIHE landscape in Malaysia study, and we would collectively explore ways for various stakeholders to collaborate and address some of the gaps, to see if collaboration would work, to look at how we can develop knowledge and capacity and drive future ambitions of the academic community and the practitioner sector in this area, and to see how social innovation and social entrepreneurship activities in higher education specifically is gaining momentum during this pandemic, and listen to the different perspectives from the diverse stakeholders whom we are very pleased to have here with us today. So welcome to everyone, wishing you all a really fruitful discussion, and we'll probably look forward to listening to some of the perspectives shared for the findings as well as the panel sessions and the Q&A especially. So do pose your questions in the chat and do participate in this discussion, because all your input would greatly contribute to the next steps and how we can all collectively think about taking some of these recommendations forward. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Prabha, for your wonderful opening remark. Next, I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Sharina Mohammad Nordin from Universiti Teknologi Petronas to share key findings from social innovation and higher education landscape in Malaysia study. Dr. Sharina, the screen is yours.
All right, let me share the slides first. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to our fellow students, for our fellow participants from Malaysia, and also from those who are from other parts of the world like UK and Glasgow. Good morning to everyone from there, and also hello to those who are from other parts of the world. So thank you very much, Ms. Isha. So today we are going to present on the key findings or the summary of the report findings on a study that was done between 2019 and 2020 when British Council partnered with a number of countries to conduct a mapping study on social innovation and higher education landscape. And for this particular session that we're having this afternoon is on specifically within the context of Malaysia. And I am Shahrina binti Mohammad Nordin from Center of Social Innovation, or better known as COSI, from Universiti Teknologi Petronas. Yeah. Right, so as mentioned earlier, this particular study was done simultaneously in several countries, which are Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and South Korea, led by the UK and from University of Northampton. So just to provide a very quick overview of the study, this research is part of the Global Social Innovation and Higher Education Landscape Project, which was led by, as mentioned earlier, Northampton University by Prof. Richard, and it was funded by the British Council. And in Malaysia, we have several objectives that we had to meet. Number one is to understand the existing social innovation research and teaching landscape at higher education institutions. That's the first one. Second one, to analyze gaps in knowledge, capacity, and future ambition of the academic community within this area, in social innovation. And the third one is to gauge the levels of trust and collaboration across academic disciplines between universities and between the universities themselves, and also between universities and the societies. And the fourth one is to assess the quantity of social innovation and social enterprise related research in Malaysia. And finally, to examine the quantity and quality of teaching and social innovation and social enterprise and research in Malaysia. Related courses and programs in Malaysia. So the findings will be able to indicate knowledge and capacity gaps in creating vibrant social innovation teaching and research, as well as putting forth recommendations for research agenda and also higher education institution policy makers. Now, this is the methodology that was adopted in the study. We started with in-depth literature review, those studies and projects related to social innovation and social entrepreneurship that took place within the Malaysian context. And then the findings were shared with other countries to develop the instrument for the online survey. And for the online survey, a purposive sampling was conducted, and with more than 100 invitations that were sent out through email. But we managed to get 50 questionnaires that were completed and were analyzed. So 50 respondents took place. Generally, the respondents, in terms of the demography-wise, they were well distributed in terms of age, length of experience, positions, and also the demography was well represented from the whole country, meaning from Sabah, Sarawak, Malaysia, Peninsular Malaysia, and also from the east, south, north. So there were many universities that were involved in this particular study. Right, so for the qualitative part of the study, we had adopted and employed semi-structured interviews and also focus group discussion. So 60 participants took part in this particular study for the qualitative part, where 16.2 hours was recorded for the whole sessions. And it involved not only academics, but the sessions also involved practitioners, policymakers, and also students, undergraduate students, and also postgraduate students. So there were quite a number of people involved there. And then these data from both the survey, quantitative, and also from the qualitative part of the study were triangulated for insights from the findings. And recommendations were developed and put forth from 3 different levels. One is on practical part, on the practical side, on the institutional part, and also at the systemic level. Right, as mentioned earlier, the first part of the study was quantitative. So we had developed an instrument, which is a questionnaire to collect the data. So the questionnaire focuses on 5 or 6 different areas. And the first part is on research trend. The second part is on teaching. The third part is on community engagement. Fourth on collaboration, fifth on trust, and finally on challenges in advocating and promoting social innovation. Right, so this is the first part of the finding, which is on research trend. Now, research trend was measured based on the output or the outcome of research, which is on academic publications. Yeah, and we are glad to, we're happy to report or to share that there is indeed a positive growth in social innovation research. Yeah? As you can see, there is a significant increase of academic publications over time between 2010 up to 2019 with a 75% of growth. As you can see there, until 2018, because 2019 it was only halfway of data collection because of the study was done or the data collection was done in mid-2019 during the time, yeah. And there were more empirical papers, yeah, when it comes to the publication, and less theoretical papers, about 27 publications. But there was an even split, yeah, between quantitative and qualitative methodologies that were adopted in the research that were reported or published in the journals. Yeah? Right, so when it comes to research publications, based on the observation and based on the findings, we noticed that there are 3 main areas that the publications would usually touch on. The first one is social innovation and the role of higher education. The second area of publications or theme of publications would touch on conceptualization of social innovation. And the third one is social innovation and poverty alleviation. Yeah? So these are the 3 usual themes, yeah, that we found in the academic publications or the research that are being published. So there is certainly a need for more in-depth research, yeah, to develop knowledge and also to develop intellectual capital, yeah, around social innovation in or within the Malaysian context. So, but of course, yeah, there are barriers, yeah, and one of the most striking barrier, I would say, is actually on funding. Yeah, you will notice that this is quite strongly felt by the respondents, yeah, which remains as a challenge, yeah, to these academics. And if you can see on the publication side, yeah, 1/3, yeah, only 1/3 of the publications are funded. No, 1/3 of the publications are self-funded, yeah, and about 17% with no funding. So that makes up to almost 50%, or 47.7% are either self-funded or no funding at all, yeah, and only 14% funding from the government. So therefore, probably there's a need of to improvement on this, or to explore on how to further strengthen on this particular matter. In terms of the teaching trend, we can see that there is a positive outlook and growth in social innovation teaching. Yeah, so there is a positive increase, as you can see there, in the number of SI-related teaching activities, about 35% in 2017 to 2018 alone. Yeah, so 45% of the students are observed as enjoy or prefer project-based learning when it comes to social innovation. Yeah, in comparison to classroom-based learning. Right, so when it comes to the pedagogical approaches, we notice that quite a number of pedagogical approaches are being used by SISE lecturers or academics in their classrooms. The first one is teaching and learning that go beyond the four walls of the classroom. Based on the findings, there are various pedagogical approaches that are being used by the academics when it comes to the teaching of social innovation and social entrepreneurship. One is on teaching and learning that go beyond the four walls of the classroom. For example, they will ask the students to go to the communities, to address certain societal challenges. Number two is provided platforms for ideation, for example, amongst the students. Number three is social innovation forums, for example, to encourage intellectual discourse and also discussion amongst the students, and also extra co-curriculum activities, for example, through clubs and societies like Enactus, for example. But of course, there are certain barriers that are being registered. For example, lack of specific courses on social innovation and social entrepreneurship. Majority of SI teaching and activities are being embedded in non-SI courses. And there is also lack of top-down policy for social innovation curriculum, specifically on social innovation and social entrepreneurship. Right, for community engagement, we saw a lot of passionate scholars, passionate academics in higher education institutions. We had like 52 community engagement projects that were being reported by the respondents. And then there was a lot of active participation by the academics with the communities. So academics are engaged with the communities, especially NGOs and social enterprises in various roles. For example, committee members or advisory role or volunteers, for example, And there are many collaborative activities like training, for example. They maybe partner up with certain government agencies or SE to provide training and also advocacy and campaign, service delivery, for example, the academic also got their students or encouraged their students to engage the community in a very meaningful way. So they, for example, they sent the students to the communities to address certain, to identify certain challenges. And there was this one instance, they developed a proposal together with the communities and submitted the proposal to a funding agency to obtain funding for such for their programs or projects. Right. So when it comes to partnership and trust, there is a positive trend that was also observed with regards to the collaboration. HEIs, as you all know, academics in higher learning institutions in Malaysia, we are quite used to what we call as the quadruple helix model or quintuple helix model. UTM, UMK, UUM, USM, all these universities that we went to, they embrace quadruple helix model and quintuple helix model when it comes to forming a partnership. But the most common partnership that is registered or reported is between the universities themselves, amongst the HEIs themselves, about 31%. They also have collaborations with NGOs and also with community. There is this very encouraging trend on international collaboration between the academia, the academics and NGOs, not only within Malaysia, but also in other countries as well. For example, SIHE is Social Entrepreneurship for Economic Development, and for example, ASEAN Learning Network, for example. So there is this positive trend that we see starting, that has begun, and I'm sure Dr. Mark later will also address Silken. Or share with us about Silken. That is also another platform where we can form partnership and collaboration for knowledge sharing, for example. And then, as I mentioned earlier, funding quadruple helix model, especially for funding, because the lack of funding, they create a lot of collaboration to pursue funding from the corporate sector or from the government agencies, for example. When it comes to trust, in terms of trust, respondents have highest level of trust towards their own institutions. I would say that that's a very good thing, while they have quite a low level of trust towards politicians and also towards parliament members. So right, so when it comes to key challenges in promoting social innovation, there are just quite a number of challenges, but as you can already see throughout my presentation, one of the most concern is on the lack of funding, and also lack of policy framework, and another one that is of a concern is on human resource. And they feel that there are a number of agencies or parties that can lead responsibility in overcoming challenges. For example, like the government themselves. For policy framework, for example, as I said earlier, there's a lack of policy framework in terms of curriculum development, for example, and then and also to look into student employability. Right, for social enterprise, they also look forward to forming collaboration with social enterprises, especially to collaborate together for funding, financial support, for example, and to obtain management support from the institutions. And they also say that HEIs could be the leading parties responsible to increase awareness among students on the importance of social innovation and social entrepreneurship, especially with regards to nurturing the students for as job creators instead of job seekers. So these challenges, as I shared just now, require academics to perhaps rethink the approach on how social innovation can be driven not top down, but rather through a bottom-up approach. So we need to be more, I would say, innovative, to think about how can we do better in overcoming these challenges. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we put forth 8 recommendations at 3 different levels. One is practice, institutional, and third is systemic. So there are 2 for practice level, pedagogical approaches that go beyond the classroom, because it seems that feedback shows students prefer this kind of approach where they go and engage communities for problem-based learning, for example, to find a solution and ideation. And number 2 is to encourage our academics to go for global network and linkages for social innovation, especially for not only knowledge sharing or knowledge exchange, but also for project collaborative effort, for example. Right, so the third one is introducing social innovation as a career aspiration. We've put forth about 4 recommendations at the institutional level. For social innovation as a career aspiration, very often, students, they are not certain about their career. So we need to provide more awareness programs for them to look into social innovation and social entrepreneurship in nurturing these students towards job creators, to become job creators, as I mentioned earlier. And the fourth one is developing various options for financial support, especially for the research projects for students, for example. We need to be creative and innovative to do this. Fifth is providing incentives for co-curriculum development with practitioners. We talk about this a lot, in inviting, for example, the social enterprises to come on board into our classroom to share their experience with our students. So probably there is a need to strengthen this further at an institutional level, because I see that many academics provided feedback that they do this, but at their own initiative, on their own initiative. And continuous institutional support and upskilling opportunities to graduate. We need to bring back, to bring home the alumni, to provide them with an avenue or platform for sharing. And also that's a way and for us to measure the success of our curriculum. Yeah, how well are they doing out there, yeah, in the real world. And also to embed social innovation in higher education system, that would be at a systemic level. Yeah, as mentioned earlier, a lot of the social innovation activities are embedded within the courses, but not really in an institutionalized manner. And also the last one is building a sustainable ecosystem for social innovation and education. We already see positive trending. Yeah, we already see an increased awareness, increased interest and passion, yeah, on this. So at a glance, yeah, however, social innovation seems or implementation seems to rest on the shoulders of only few key stakeholders. So it's time that we look and explore for ways on how can we strengthen further, yeah, on the ecosystem for social innovation in higher education institutions. So these are the team members that were together with us. And that's all from me, Isha. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharina, for sharing findings from the study. So we have some questions from our participants. The first question is about project-based learning. So project-based learning is looking at application of social innovation. Are the students being taught of the theory behind social innovation, for instance, impact indicator?
Sorry, I sort of lost you a little bit just now because of the network. Can you repeat,
Sure.
please? Sorry.
It's okay. Project-based learning is looking at application of social innovation. Are students being taught about the theories behind social innovation, for instance, impact indicator? I think the participants wanting to know what theories are being taught when you say, SI teaching.
Right. When it comes to social innovation, yeah, of course there are some theoretical framework there, but as we established, there is a need to further refine on the definition of social innovation, especially when it comes to theoretical framework. But when it comes to students, yeah, one of the most used pedagogical approach, as I said earlier, is PBL, problem-based learning. So it could be a blended approach of classroom approach and PBL in the community, whereby in the classroom we can expose or we can share with them on the different perspective of social innovation, because as we all know, social innovation is multidisciplinary, and there are a lot of things to be considered when it comes to addressing social challenges, societal challenges with regards to using social innovation. When we talk about blended approach, the other part is to allow the students to go into the real world, to go into the communities themselves and explore for themselves what are the societal challenges that they can actually help address, and also to brainstorm, to get to work together with the communities on the solutioning and also on ideation. So therefore, that would be a more impactful approach, I would think, with regards to social innovation teaching and learning activities.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sharina. We have another question. This question was submitted during registration. As students of higher learning institutions, how can the students benefit from these study findings?
Right. I would answer that from two different perspectives. One is that the study actually had involved many students as well, yeah, as participants, especially for focus group discussion and interview. So we had interviewed quite a number of students from UTM, UMK, and many other universities, both at the undergraduate level and postgraduate level. Yeah. So and they provided a lot of feedback that could help to further enhance to provide feedback on enhancing the teaching and learning activities in higher learning education. And from the other perspective is from the academic perspective or higher education perspective. Upon listening to this finding, yeah, they are able to, oh, okay, you know, they know where are the gaps, they would know where is their strength, so they will be hopefully able to design better curriculum, to embed better teaching and learning activities in the curriculum. Hence, that would definitely also be beneficial to the students in higher learning education in Malaysia, or HEIs in Malaysia. Yeah.
I think we've covered most of the questions. Come on, participants, don't be shy. Put your questions for the SIHE study in the box on the right. Sorry, on the right side. Let me see. Okay, maybe we'll just proceed to the next session. So thank you, Dr. Sharina, for the insightful presentation on the landscape of social innovation and social entrepreneurship in Malaysia's higher education institutions. Our next session is a panel discussion on social innovation from the lens of higher education, focusing on this COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. I would like to introduce our distinguished panelists. Dr. Mark Anderson from Glasgow Caledonian University, Ms. Raudhah Nazran from Accelerate Global, Dr. Amira Abdul Rahman from Universiti Malaysia Kelantan. The panel discussion will be moderated by Ahmed Faris Amir from Impact Integrated. So over to you, Matt.
Great. Thank you, Isha. Since there are people from different time zones, so I'll just say hello and welcome to SIHE report dialogue. And I was told that we were all given only 45 minutes, but now I think since it's already 5:10, we'll try to cut it short. So let's just jump straight into the conversation. And thank you, Isha, for also introducing our panel speakers. So just a bit of a context to the audience as to what conversation are we going to have today. We intend to focus on the recommendations part, as presented by Dr. Sharina earlier. And the intention is to look into those recommendations, dissect it a little bit, look into if there are any concerns or suggestions or ways to implement it, etc. And we'll hear from our panel speakers that are joining us today. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Let's look at the first recommendation, which is 6.1, the one that mentioned something along the lines of embedding social innovation in different disciplines in Malaysia. But also just a bit of a context as well. Status quo in Malaysia is that SE or SI are only taught in entrepreneurship subject rather than in multiple disciplines. So the recommendation is to apply it in different disciplines as well, so that it's more embedded. And I would like to direct this question to Dr. Mark, because I would like to think that this is already implemented in Glasgow Caledonian University. Perhaps Dr. Mark, you can shed some light as to what it's like when it's implemented, or perhaps some suggestion as to how do we go about it. I'll pass this question to Dr. Mark now.
Thanks very much, Med. I think that I'm going to slightly contradict you, perhaps. And I think first I'm just going to start with something personal. I'm actually not a doctor, and it's very nice of you to bestow a doctorate on me so effortlessly. But I think it's important to say this really just because I think it's important to see the context. My role in Glasgow Caledonian is Director of Research and Innovation. And I think it's always very interesting that I'm a Director of Research and Innovation who doesn't do research and innovation. Or strictly speaking, I'm responsible for managing the research and innovation rather than doing it. And I think that a lot of the issues we have in terms of how we implement and how we embed social innovation is really the fact that most of the people who are involved in it are researchers, And not only that, they're social innovation researchers, in other words, social scientists. And really the way that universities should be embedding social innovation is really in the sense that innovation in universities is about exploiting the knowledge and adding value to the knowledge. Social innovation is really about exploiting knowledge and adding societal value. So rather than making money out of it, you're actually doing good within your communities. So I think what's really important to remember is that we're not, as universities, and of course, unfortunately, the academics who are involved in it, many of them see themselves as this. We're not involved in social innovation to look at what's happening in the world and then draw conclusions from it. The social innovation we should be implementing within universities is ensuring that our knowledge from engineers, from health specialists, from historians is all looking at and aiming at how we can add societal value. And in the same way as when we embed curricular activities, it's how can we prepare our students to add societal value to the knowledge that they've received from the university. And I think that it's really important to contextualize it in that sense, because if you approach it as a research discipline, you're limited to the area of social sciences. You really have to see it as a strategic goal within the university. Now, our university has set as a strategic goal that it wants to be a world-leading social innovation university by 2030. I started talking about social innovation in the university and was totally ignored in about 2012. So it gives you a sense of the gestation period. But I mean, just to directly answer your question, what is absolutely necessary if we're going to get past individual heroes is that we have institutional commitment. We had Mohammad Yunus as our chancellor for a number of years, and our motto of the university is for the common good. So it's very much embedded in the university. The other thing is that I would say, and it's good news for probably most of us, is that if you're a highly research intensive traditional university, it's extremely difficult for you to change paths and to redirect what you're doing. We're a modern university, which means that we're flexible and agile enough to do it. The challenge for us is to make sure that while we're involved in social innovation, we're also aspiring for research excellence and quality in our teaching, and to make sure that it's not purely aspirational. And I think I'll leave it there. I'll shut up there. I've gone on far too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. No doctor, but congrats on the doctorate anyway. I know you have plenty more to expound on that point, but I think we'll leave it and see if I can get back to you on some of the things that you mentioned earlier, because I do have a follow-up question, but it's okay, not now. So let's just firstly, quickly move on to another topic, because I think this is also important to talk about the aspiration of our students today. And one of the recommendations is to introduce social innovation career aspiration. And I think the best person to perhaps shed some light on this would be Raudhah, the youngest amongst us all, who just recently graduated, I don't know, about 2-3 years ago. No, or much longer, but at least not as long as the rest of us, for sure. So I just want to know your thoughts on this, Raudhah. Do you think this will be any good to our youth today, especially? And I guess this is important to contextualize towards the Gen Z, because in comparison to the more senior generation, our Gen Z or our younger counterparts are more aware. They're more woke. When it comes to social innovation and any social things, they're generally better than the rest of us. So do you think this aspiration will be any good to them? And that's the first question. But second is, would that have changed anything for you if this is something that we did while you were still studying?
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Matt. I graduated a year and a half ago. So yes, rather, it's still fresh. And just to address your second question, actually, I think I'll start with your second question. It will most definitely change the youth's lives. I think it's really important for us to understand that we are not just trying to create the next generation of leaders, we are trying to create the next generation of responsible leaders. And to create the next generation of responsible leaders, they need to have a good and excellent understanding of, social entrepreneurship scene, social innovation scene. I think Mark mentioned this quite thoroughly earlier about how can the students contribute back to the community and to the society. And I think it's really high time that we speak about what the next generation of responsible leaders can do, in which essentially is the Gen Z. To address your first question, it will most definitely change my life. I think I was lucky enough to score a government scholarship. So I studied in the UK, and that was the first time I learned about the concept of social entrepreneurship, shockingly. So when I was in Malaysia, I had to do a preparatory program, A-levels, in a local college. And we did have sort of, project-based learning, something about giving back to the community. But the only concept that was taught to me then was charity. And so all of us had this understanding that, all right, if you want to contribute back to the society, you must be rich. You must have funding, right? You must have 100,000 ringgit or 500,000 ringgit to contribute back. But when I actually shifted to Essex, I was from University of Essex, I was taught the concept of social entrepreneurship as I was a part of the social enterprise back in my university. And I was so stunned and impressed by the fact that you can contribute to the society whilst also becoming financially sustainable. So for someone like me, I thought, you know what, this is most definitely a career path that I'd like to go into. Because it's not just you helping the community and sort of doing something more valuable, doing something more meaningful. You can also become financially sustainable without essentially, jeopardizing the sustainability of your life. I think that's really important. So I've had the leverage of actually working with a lot of youths because at Accelerate, youths are essentially our main beneficiaries. I've talked to a lot of them in university, local university, and some of them come up to me, and surprisingly, the concept of entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship is still foreign to them. As they ask questions such as, how much funding do we need to start a social enterprise? So to start a social enterprise, do we need X amount of money? Do we need funding from this people or that people? So I was quite stunned and a bit puzzled actually, because when I was in the UK, I was taught to start something from nothing. You see, it's not just about having X amount of money. It's not about taking up loans and, in turn you'll have debt as a student. It's about how can you create tangible change without anything, without capital, but you can still contribute back to the society and becoming financially sustainable. I can vouch, Med, if I didn't study in the UK, I don't think I'll be a social entrepreneur now. I think I'd be a full-fledged lawyer, because I had a legal background and I didn't practice because I fell in love with social entrepreneurship. And I would want the Malaysian students to have the same opportunity, because believe it or not, they are so driven, so ambitious. I just got out of a meeting with Inti students, Inti College, and they are so full of aspiration to become social entrepreneurs. But there are so many questions and they lack that sort of understanding as to the framework of social innovation, where to begin, how to scale, where to ask for help. I feel like we need to start, instill the social entrepreneurship element in various courses and not just entrepreneurship. Yeah, I think that is most definitely needed. If I were to study in a local university, I would want to see that. I would want the same experience I've gotten in the UK. And I feel it's not fair for me to have the only privilege to, to understand that concept, and the local students who essentially are youth as my generation, who still do not have the understanding of the concept.
Thank you, Raudhah. Interesting take. I will get back to you on the bit about your experience running your own accelerator. And I think one of the recommendations here would be perfect for us to try and dissect that a little bit more. So hang tight. I want to move on to Dr. Anis now. So I think this is where I would like to personally clarify. Dr. Anis now, beyond her work with UMK, she's also a trustee of Suri Bachok Foundation. And I would probably be requiring Dr. Anis to wear both hats later, depending on the recommendations. But I think for the first recommendation I'd like to speak about now, I think this one you'll put on your UMK hat. Because I would like to know a bit more about this recommendation, pedagogical approach beyond the classroom. I mean, in principle, I think it's a good idea generally, but I don't think it's as easy considering how structured the syllabus currently in our Malaysian higher education. Any experience in UMK perhaps, which I believe you have already, Dr. Anis, and you want to share us your experience on this, and perhaps also tell us how can we really get this done. Over to you, Dr. Anis. You have to unmute first, Dr. Anis. Couldn't hear you.
Okay, sorry. Eager to speak. Stop me if I'm beyond. All right. Okay, about pedagogy. Yeah. So if we read the report, when it's talk about recommendations, that regards to the pedagogy is pedagogical approach beyond classroom. Okay, so we can see here that it suggests the project-based or contextual teaching techniques, and also going into the community. Yeah, this is, I think everybody did it at university, because we have Sulam, we have what is that? Service Learning Malaysia. So it is one of the policies, so everybody has to do it. University for society, and but what is the challenge due to COVID? Before this, we can have face-to-face. Student can go to the community, asking any problem, and helps the community to solve the problem. But nowadays, the teaching and learning is in the virtual world. So that is the big question on how we can encounter it. Okay, so I would like to share what we do in UMK. So the strategy that we use is like a pedagogical approach based on the locality. Meaning that one of my students is in Perak, one is in Sabah. So they have to choose one's locality that have problem, the community that has problem, but they work in team because they can discuss via internet, they can brainstorm via internet, and they can Google, even Google Earth or any application just to communicate with each other. So the problem-based learning is still happening. And going to the community is also still happening, because one of the participants will go and see what is the problem in the society. And then they come back via internet and they can discuss. Okay, so I think UMK have done a very good job, because we can see from entrepreneur graduates employability, it increasing. Yeah. The higher education's target is 10%, but in UMK in 2018 is 2.8, up to 12.97% in 2019, and in 2020 is 40.8%. So I think our approach is quite reasonable because of this. However, as Raudhah said, why students don't know about this? One is the conceptual. So the concept is not clear, and also the lecturer is not, the capacity building, because it's new. So the lecturer also don't have enough knowledge. So from the movement from business to entrepreneurship, which is commercial entrepreneurship, move to the social entrepreneurship, and now social innovation. And we are also talking about social enterprise. So many terminology and so confusing. Okay, for the one who studies that, is not a problem. But how many studies entrepreneurship? How many studies social innovations? So the capacity building must be increased so the lecturers understand, and then they can contribute, transfer the knowledge to the students. Okay, and the way of teaching, because the way of teaching social entrepreneurship and social innovation is different from others' way of teaching in business study. For example, this pencil in business is only 1 ringgit. For the entrepreneur, it can be 10 ringgit. But social entrepreneur can sell this pen for 10,000 ringgit. So how you want to do that? It needs a capability of the lecturers to inculcate the student using the knowledge of social innovation or social entrepreneurship, or using the platform of social enterprise. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Anis. So it has to start with the lecturer. That's an interesting take there. And again, just like the first 2 speakers, I have a follow-up question, but I'm trying to hold myself now. I think we'll be able to do that at the Q&A session. So according to the recommendations, I think there are parts where we'll move on beyond the students and the syllabus and all that. We'll look into the ecosystem. But there is one more recommendation that goes back to the student, but it's about them when they become graduates. This is on the 6.6 recommendation about continuous institutional support and upskilling opportunities to graduates. But the recommendation here is a lot to do with tracking, the graduates. Right. So I think generally I would like to believe that all the speakers here believe that impact measurement is important, and also the audience too. But of course, in the context of tracking the graduates here, how long is a good time, right? And I'm sure, I think once we dive deeper, we'll have something else to look into. But for now, maybe I'll just pass this over to Raudhah, and maybe you can suggest to us like how long is enough time for us to track our graduates, or whether or not this is even good to begin with.
Yeah, thank you very much, Med. So we actually have an impact measurement tool at Accelerate. So whenever our beneficiaries go through our Accelerate Reach Entrepreneurship Program, which essentially is 3.5 months long, we track their progress through something called business incubation. So it's not like the program at Accelerate essentially is 3.5 months long, where they learn how to become an entrepreneur, where they learn the traits of entrepreneur, how to start a business, funding, etc., essentially like the whole package of entrepreneurship. They graduate the program with a business that they can already launch or is already launched. But it doesn't stop there. What we do at Accelerate is that all these graduates, we keep in touch with them for the next 4 months, and we call it so-called business incubation, where we do a monthly check-in to check on their pulse, on their business pulse. How are they doing? Is the business viable? Is it working? Do you have customers? If it's not working, how can we help you, right? And that lasts for about 4 months. Now, after they finish the business incubation, what happens is that we then check in again with them after 6 months, not to do a rigorous assessment, but after 6 months, we merely check on them on 4 key important elements. Number 1 is, how is their mental health as a social entrepreneur or as an entrepreneur? Second is, how is their emotional well-being? Third, how is their spiritual well-being? And fourth is how are they doing, physically? The reason being, when they are healthy in all these 4 quadrants, let's just call that, right? So mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, then there's a high chance that their business too is doing good. So at Accelerate, we don't just measure how much money you're making in your business. We don't just measure how far you've gotten from last year to this in your business. We focus very much on their well-being as an entrepreneur, which I believe is very important. Because if the entrepreneur or the young entrepreneurs out there are not healthy mentally or physically or spiritually or emotionally, then there will, sustainability is out of the question already. So with Accelerate, we do 4 months of business incubation. That's monthly check-in. After that, we leave them to sort of, launch the business, thrive, learn, make mistakes, and learn again. And on the 6th month, we essentially check on their pulse and how they are doing as an entrepreneur. And I think that's very, very important. Just to share, Med, before we started this, impact measurement tool, we focused very much on the output, the success of the business, how much money you're making. Believe it or not, when we did that, not many students would want to participate in the, check-ins. But when we change it to essentially checking in on you, and not just checking in on your business and the success of your business, we got more traction. The traction increased. So I feel like when we talk about impact management tool, very important. Yes, we must track, the success, the impact, whether or not, it works, because that's how we know whether the system or the program works. But we need to tweak it a little bit and personalize that assessment towards them and not just their business, because chances are they're going to think, oh, they just want to check in to see whether or not their program works, but not on me. Where is the personalization part? I can speak, I think, for my generation. I hope I'm speaking for the large voices of Gen Z out there, that we like to be heard as a person, and we don't just like to be judged by our numbers, our money, like, is it successful? We just want to be heard in terms of us as a person and our well-being. I think that's really, really vital. And that's what we do at Accelerate. I hope that helps. It helped us, at Accelerate.
Thank you. Yes, great answer. But if I look at your profile, you work with polytechnic students.
Yes.
As well, right? Would you say there any difference in terms of their acceptance of social innovation, as in perhaps in comparison to non-polytechnic students who are potentially, you get what I mean? So
I understand. Yeah. Yes, I completely understand. There is obviously a major difference in terms of the way we deliver the course, and the way we speak, and the language we speak, and how we explain entrepreneurship. But if you talk about motivation and drive, you would be surprised of how much more they are driven than, let's just call, privileged students. I've worked with, I think I lost count of how many polytechnic students I've worked with, but I've worked with enough of them to know that they crave for programs such as social entrepreneurship programs. We have this program called the 14-Day Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, and we're very privileged and honored that our program was chosen by the Ministry of Higher Education to run a pilot with 100 B40 youths. And when we run this program, they were literally competing, who's going to go first? Who's going to go to the first cohort? They want to be there because we run it per cohort. We run 10 students per cohort, just so that, it's not cramped up and we can give the necessary attention to them. They were competing. I'm going first. Like, I'm getting there. They're so driven, and they really want to learn. And I feel like it's because of, I think one of the motivation as well is, of course, their background and wanting to change, their life. And I think another is also to change the perspective. There is one student I really wish is here. His name is Marks from Polytechnic Kuching. He started our 14-day entrepreneurship program, started a business selling inflatable swimming pools, ended up with 15,000 ringgit in profit. So I was shocked. I mean, it's not about yes, it is about the numbers here, the example, but I'm just shocked because he hit the numbers because he was driven. And none of the privileged students that I've worked with, has ever hit that number in 14 days. Right. Can you imagine? Yes. Yeah, so their drive is there, the determination is there. I think the key difference is just, how we deliver, how we speak. Of course, they need more encouragement. And I think, the way society sees them as well, oh, polytechnic, we have that stigma, which I really wish we can change, because I think they're quite insecure when they first entered the program. But as you get to know them, you can see their determination and drive.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Raudhah. Thank you for that. So that as I mentioned earlier, those are the recommendations that revolve around students, but so let's look into something bigger than just the university, and but still related to, of course, the curriculum. And I think I want to direct this one to Mark. And to some extent, it's something that was hinted in what Mark answered earlier about there's no point if there's no societal value created if you only limit your work onto research. So this is a lot to do with the role of academia and practitioners. And I'm going to argue something now, and then I'll leave it to you whether you agree or disagree, that there's a disconnect between practitioners and academia. And to some extent, practitioners will be out there doing the work, and academia will then, pick it up, learn it, do a research, and then it will stuck in journal. Right. So of course, that's not great, and I believe that a lot of the academia is moving towards a better approach now. But this is a lot to do with recommendation 6.5, which suggests that we develop policies and incentive by connecting social innovation practitioners with academia. What are your thoughts on this, Mark?
Thanks, Ned. Okay, so I'm going to start with a plug, but it's relevant. I think I put it in the chat. So we've set up a platform to try and connect universities with social innovators, and in the project that we're doing with the British Council as a follow-up to SIHE, we've set up Silken, the social innovation linkages through knowledge exchange network. And this platform, which actually goes across the world with our various networks, is dedicated to linking universities with social innovators, getting social innovators to come onto the platform and to exchange, but exchange at an international level. Now, we're setting this up, and I can tell you this is a real effort on our part to try and make these linkages. Why is it so complicated? So I think I'm going to kind of contradict myself several times, so you'll have to forgive me. So I think the first thing is that I said before that a lot of social innovators feel that researchers use them as guinea pigs, and then they publish and then they forget about them, and what value is it for them? And I think that before I go on, I should say that there is a value for them that they miss, because the researchers then present their findings to governments and policymakers, and then the policymakers invest. And yes, I absolutely agree with Raudhah that you shouldn't be saying I need money to start, but actually it's quite good to have money around to invest, especially in the area of social innovation. And so the policymakers receive the research and then they respond. They don't always respond, and this is one of our issues, and the whole question of impact and how we measure it. But I think so I think there are two kind of directions. One, social innovators have to see the value of engaging with universities, and universities need to be able to demonstrate their value to the social innovator. And I think that I know a lot of people who are involved in social enterprises. There's and we have to differentiate between social entrepreneurship at the ideation stage, where like Raudhah's doing this fantastic job at driving these students who are really, a whole world is opening up to them. But then you get at the later stages, acceleration, internationalization, sustainability. How do you ensure that happens? And I think it's really important that we're arming people with the tools, and that we understand that social innovators, they are very busy people, and if they're going to succeed, they have to really dedicate, and it's tough. And also, and I'll leave it here, one really important point, Med, social innovation, we talk about the quadruple helix, we talk about all this stuff. There's something really fundamental about social innovation that makes it different. The whole kind of dynamic between universities and how they're exploiting their knowledge changes. For social innovation to work, you have to engage with the communities who are going to benefit. I have a terrible story of a bunch of students in Northern Ireland who were doing a fantastic social innovation helping refugees. And they were helping the refugees by giving them the skills to knit toys for children, and the refugees were given the equipment, they were get to knit and then to sell them. And then one day, one of the refugees turned around to the student and said, "You do realize I am a qualified lawyer, don't you?" And these students, they had never talked to the refugees about what their needs, what their skills, what they could offer. They would just thought, hey, we're going to do something wonderful in the world. You have to engage with the communities. And then when you engage with the communities, then you bring on board the social innovators, and then you can find added value that you can offer. Really, really important.
Thanks, Mark. That was lovely. We have one more recognition that we want to cover, and I think I want to direct this to Dr. Anis. And this is where perhaps you might want to shift your hat towards your trustee with the foundation, if you would like to. Otherwise, can still answer from the point of view of UMK. This is about ecosystem, and of course, it's great. It's about building a sustainable ecosystem, something that we all say a lot, and half the time becomes a jargon, and we just say it repeatedly, hoping that it becomes a thing. But I think, considering the work and your experience, Dr. Anis, maybe you want to talk about this a little bit, because I would like to hear really about how do we connect the university as well as social innovators. Because I'm not convinced that this can be done, especially considering the nature of universities and academia in general. Can you share us your experience, Dr. Anis, doing this?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. There is a saying says that social innovator is a crazy people, because they makes the impossible possible, and it takes a lot of energy, like Mark says. Yeah, so 1% roles is very important to orchestrate everything, and to do that, we need a very good ecosystem. And for higher education, the policy is very important. So I think last month we already, Ministry of Higher Education already, the Entrepreneurship Action Plans, Higher Education Institution 2020 to 2025, and also MOHI Guide to Entrepreneurship Integrated Education. So both books mentions about the ecosystem and the importance of ecosystem. So in line with that, which is the issues coming out from the research, is about funding. Yeah, it's about funding, it's about incubations, it's about collaborations. So I think the ecosystem in the university is quite good enough. Yeah. So, for example, in UMK, we have a Center of Entrepreneurship, which overlook everything in the university. Under the center, they have three another more center, which is, we call it CEED, looking at the student entrepreneur. ISME, which is I'm the director, looking at the entrepreneur outside the university, and also alumni. And the other center is GERIX, looking at the social and research about social innovations. So it's beautiful. So when students want to do something about social innovation, they know where to go. The problem is how we connect higher education with the community, because it's like separated. Yeah, the community, especially during COVID, everybody afraid to die, so they want to give more compared to the previous COVID, but they don't know where to. Okay, so I would like to share my experience. Yeah, in UMK we have one grant. It's called UMK MOF Social Enterprise Project. Yeah. So this grant, we have 13 projects, and one of the project is my project. So my responsible is to change ASNAF, which is the income household is beyond 9 something or beyond 1,000. So my challenge is how to use business venturing to change this status. It's really hard, yeah, because that's why I said that the social entrepreneur or to make a social innovation is not about money, as Raudhah says. It's about emotions, it's about spirit, it's about soul. If you doesn't have that as a project leader or team leader for social innovator, you cannot do that because you will face challenge. This community of Asnaf believe that they are not good, that they are born to be poor. And how can you change that? But we managed to do that. Yeah, with the technique, yeah, it's not normal. It's not, you know, go to the class and tell, no, you cannot teach them like that. You have to use, for example, we have to use neuro-linguistic programming. So we use the technique, this technique to change their mind. Once they change their mind, they change their behavior, and then the knowledge of managing business coming in. Yeah, so we are happy, and this is the engagement not with the university. It's engagement with the Ministry of Finance. It also engagements with the Majlis Agama Islam and Adat Istiadat Melayu Kelantan and others private agencies. Yeah. Okay, that's one. The other one is, this is very interesting during COVID. Yeah. One, this is now I changed my hat. Okay, so we come to know that one of the villages doesn't have money to buy food. Yeah, doesn't have money during COVID. It's not happened before COVID. It's during COVID. So we try to help. Yeah, and then we found out that you know, the drinking water and everything, and we make it short. We test the water and we found it contaminated. So from that, we create a wakaf water, you know, water that you know, give free to the people. I believe in ripple effect theory, you know. It's by chance. It's not by design. It's by chance. So from that, we because of the water, we come to know that they don't have money to buy food. So we create a dapur asnaf or asnaf kitchens. So they can come and people who doesn't have money can contribute by cooking. Yeah. And then whoever, without question, whoever asnaf or B40 can come and eat without questions. And the funding flowing by default inside, because everybody want to have, and also because of the social media.
Thank you.
Yes, so everybody's know this project, so they want to have, they want to have shared to the heaven.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then the effect, another effect when we see that is when they want to go to school, they don't have clothes. Yeah. So we create free market, and then now everything is online. Then we create a tuition place for theirs, for their children.
Tanis,
yeah.
So I'm going to have to cut you off there. Thank you for sharing that. I just got a reminder that we're supposed to wrap this up by 5:55. There are more questions from the audience. We'll try to, you know, answer some of them. And if I could remind the panelists to perhaps limit it to a minute, and for you to allow me to perhaps just interject and tell you to just cut it short in the interest of time. Okay. So there is a comment by one of our audience, which in regards to how tracking will be challenging for university with students from more than 110 countries. So this one, it's a lot. Perhaps it's for both Mark or Dr. Anis, but since Dr. Anis just spoken, maybe I'll pass this to Mark. Like, so tracking will be difficult, of course, right? Especially when your students are from other parts of the world. So how do we go about this? And I mean, I'm sure Raudhah already spoke about it earlier about how tracking is done with her polytechnic students. What are your comments on this, Mark?
Well, Med, you originally talked. You said something interesting. You said how long should you be tracking, which is a very interesting question, because I'm a little older than certain people in this table, and if you wanted to track my development after I studied fine art and theatre, this is a really strange world I've gone through. So I think you know, you have the first question you have to ask is what you're doing and why you're doing it. if you're doing it to be able for the university to be able to demonstrate what it's doing. I mean, my kind of real concern is how we're measuring the impact on the ground, how we're actually, because the trouble with every revolution, and social innovation is a kind of revolution, is that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we have lots of people talking, playing the game, saying the right things, but actually there's not actually a benefit on the ground. And if that happens, then social innovation will be totally undermined. And so we need to find the right way, the metrics or the approaches to measure this, and to really be able to show not what individual students, everybody has a different biography. I think it's more what is the impact on the ground, and that both nationally and internationally. And I really passionately believe that social innovation, and let's face it, COVID, I've been traveling around the world more than I've ever been. I get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and I go from Malaysia, and I'm in Latin America in the afternoon. I mean, it's extraordinary how much more engagement we've been doing internationally with COVID and with remote working becoming so prevalent. And I think this kind of idea of creating international communities is really key, global and local.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, thank you for that. I think you answered the question, so it is very much possible. Let's try to answer another question, and this is about integrating research teaching with community development. And I think Raudhah, you would like to take this one.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think I wanted to focus more, Med, on integrating research with community development, just because I believe when we want to do a more thorough research, and I think Mark mentioned this earlier, about understanding the needs and wants of the beneficiaries of the community. Yeah, and I think research, and in terms of understanding their needs and wants, cannot just be done through statistics, cannot just be done through, interviews, cannot just be done, Googling, okay, what are the percentage of unemployment, for example, what are the percentage of ABC? It must be done through, a personalization, or through community development, essentially. What we do at Accelerate, just to share, that really helped us essentially design the program, is that we immerse ourselves and we connect ourselves with the beneficiaries through community development. We work alongside them with projects. We, take them on board to maybe run a couple of programs together, just to understand the language they speak, just to understand, what are their motivational aspects, what are their motivational factors. And I think that is a more deeper meaning of research than just essentially sitting behind the laptop and typing out statistics or understanding interviews, and et cetera. Integrating research with community development, to me, means doing community development whilst also carrying out your research. I think this element is very important to us, because we all have a tendency to sort of bury the lead in terms of, understanding the importance of community development and research. I know we're running out of time, but yeah, let me just cut it to that. Sorry if it's not concise.
Thank you. Yes, you ran out of time. I was just hoping that I get to squeeze in another one, but I better not. So that's it. That wraps up this panel discussion. There's plenty of things that we get to squeeze in, and I think deep down our panelists aren't very happy because they were stopped and I interjected. Sorry about that. We'll have another session to talk about all these things. Perfectly now it's 5:55 and Isha has appeared, so I'll just pass this back to Isha. Thank you so much to the panelists. I hope the audience enjoyed that. Thank you so much. Over to you, Isha.
Okay, thank you, Matt, for being on time. And thank you, panelists, for this fruitful discussion, invaluable perspectives on social innovation and the role of higher education and practitioners. I think there are some takeaways from today's session. I quite like Raudhah's sharing about we don't want to create just next generation leaders, we want to create next generation's responsible leaders. And there are some interesting insights shared by our participants as well, the needs versus assets. I think oftentimes we look at the things that we can offer, but not necessarily listen to the communities that we work with and what they can offer to this projects or partnerships. So yeah, I think contributions can go both ways. So I guess I don't want to go long-winded, so let's just reflect on these ideas and perspectives, engage like-minded organization and construct meaningful collaboration. So we have come to the end of the launch. Thank you so much for your participation. On behalf of the British Council, we will send links to the recording and the report to everyone who registered for this event. So thank you. If you like to connect to the panelists, yes, do let us know as well. I think you have my email address. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Isha. Thank you, British Council. Fantastic work.
Thank you, Raudhah. Thank you, Mark.
you.
And thank you, Dr. Anis. And Matt as well.
Right, bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, Isha. Bye.
Thank you.